I never thought I'd be the kind of person who checks their wife's screen time when she's in the shower. Yet here I was, standing in our dimly lit kitchen on a Wednesday evening, staring at Emma's phone face down on the granite countertop, its edge catching the warm glow of the pendant lights we'd picked out together at Home Depot 3 years ago. The house felt different lately. Quieter. The comfortable silence we used to share had transformed into something heavy, laden with unspoken words. Emma and I had been married for 7 years, high school sweethearts who'd grown up in the same small Connecticut town. She was the organized one, the planner who color-coded our calendar and remembered everyone's birthdays. I was the dreamer, the software developer who could lose himself for hours in lines of code but forgot to buy milk 3 times in a row. That evening, as steam seeped under the bathroom door and the shower ran upstairs, I noticed how Emma had started taking longer showers lately. Everything about her seemed to require more privacy these days. Her childhood friend Lily had moved back to town 6 months ago, and something about Emma had shifted since then. Small changes at first. She'd started going to yoga 3 times a week instead of once, joined a book club that met on Thursday evenings, picked up her phone more often when it buzzed. The shower shut off upstairs, and I quickly moved away from her phone, feeling guilty for even considering looking at it. But as I stirred the pasta sauce I'd been making for dinner, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the woman humming softly upstairs, a habit she'd had since we were teenagers, was somehow becoming a stranger. "Something smells amazing," Emma said as she entered the kitchen, her damp hair falling in waves around her shoulders. She wore one of my old college t-shirts as a nightgown, just like she always had. But when she reached up to grab wine glasses from the cabinet, I noticed she was wearing the expensive perfume she usually saved for special occasions. "Just trying out that new recipe you mentioned," I said, watching as she poured herself a generous glass of wine. "Rough day at the office?" "Just the usual," she replied, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Lily might stop by later to drop off some books from the club. You don't mind, do you, Nathan?" I shook my head, but something in my chest tightened. The way she said Lily's name had changed somehow, carrying a weight I couldn't quite understand. "How do you tell your wife that you miss her when she's standing right in front of you?" That night, after Lily left, I found myself alone in our home office, staring at the photos on the wall. Emma and I at our wedding, her white dress catching the autumn sunlight. Us hiking the Appalachian Trail 3 summers ago, both sunburned and laughing. Emma and Lily at their high school graduation, arms wrapped around each other, their friendship spanning nearly 2 decades. The sound of Emma's phone buzzing on her desk pulled me from my reverie. A text notification lit up the screen, Lily, with a simple heart emoji beside her name. When had that been added? I remembered when Emma's contact photo for me had been replaced with just my initials sometime last month. A small change, she'd said, to keep her phone looking cleaner. I turned back to my laptop, trying to focus on debugging a client's website, but my mind kept wandering to the way Emma and Lily had sat close together on our couch earlier, sharing whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room. They'd always been close, but something felt different now. More intense. More exclusive. "Nathan?" Emma's voice startled me. She stood in the doorway, wearing silk pajamas I didn't recognize. "Are you coming to bed?" "In a minute," I said, noticing how she hovered uncertainly, as if there was something else she wanted to say. "I've been thinking," she began, then paused, twisting her wedding ring, a nervous habit she'd developed recently. "Maybe we should try something new. Shake things up a bit." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "Well," she said, stepping into the room but keeping her distance, "we've been together since we were 18. Sometimes I wonder if we missed out on experiencing other things. Other perspectives." The implication hung in the air like smoke, making it hard to breathe. I turned my chair to face her fully, searching her expression for any trace of the girl who'd once written me love notes during chemistry class. "Emma, are you saying what I think you're saying?" She shrugged, a gesture that seemed practiced in its casualness. "I'm just suggesting we talk about opening up our marriage. Not right away, but maybe it's worth discussing?" The room seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the arms of my chair, anchoring myself to something solid. Where is this coming from? Nowhere specific, she said quickly, too quickly. I've just been reading some articles, talking to friends. Lily knows a couple who tried it, and they say it made their relationship stronger. Of course. Lily knew a couple. I need time to process this, I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. Emma nodded, already backing toward the door. Of course. No pressure. Just think about it. After she left, I sat in the dark office for a long time, wondering when exactly my wife had become a mystery to me, and why Lily's name felt like a shadow growing longer across our marriage. The suggestion of an open marriage lingered in our house like a persistent echo, bouncing off the walls during silent dinners and sleepless nights. I caught Emma watching me when she thought I wasn't looking, her expression a mix of anticipation and something else I couldn't quite name. A week after that conversation, I was loading the dishwasher when I overheard Emma on the phone in our bedroom upstairs. Her voice carried through the air vent, an old quirk of our 1960s house that had once let us share silly conversations between floors. He's still processing it, she was saying, her voice low. I know, but we have to be patient. These things take time. A pause. Lily, please. We talked about this. The plate in my hands nearly slipped. I set it down carefully, trying to steady my breathing. Why was she discussing our private marriage issues with Lily? And what exactly did they need to be patient about? That night, as we got ready for bed, I decided to probe gently. So, I started, watching her apply her night cream in methodical circles. How long have you been thinking about opening our marriage? Emma's hands paused for just a fraction of a second. A while, she said vaguely. Does it matter? It matters to me. I sat on the edge of our bed, noting how she kept her back to me. And I'm curious why Lily seems so invested in the idea. She turned then, her face composed but her neck flushing, a tell she'd had since high school. What do you mean? I mean, why are you discussing our private life with her? She's my best friend, Nathan. Who else would I talk to about this? Emma's tone was defensive, but her eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. Besides, she's been really supportive of my personal growth lately. Personal growth, I repeated, the words tasting bitter. And what exactly needs to grow? What's wrong with what we have? Emma sighed, sitting beside me but leaving a careful space between us. Nothing's wrong, exactly. I just feel like I'm changing. Discovering new sides of myself. Don't you ever wonder what else is out there? No, I said honestly. You've always been enough for me. She flinched slightly at that, and I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Frustration? Before I could analyze it further, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. We both looked at it, watching Lily's name light up the screen. Emma reached for it, but I spoke first. It's almost midnight. Book club emergency, she said quickly, already typing a response. The venue for next week cancelled. I nodded, not believing her for a second. Book club meetings were on Thursdays. Today was Saturday. As I lay awake later, listening to Emma's too even breathing beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching my marriage slip through my fingers like sand, each grain another secret I couldn't quite catch. That weekend passed in a blur of forced normalcy and careful conversations. Sunday evening found me in our garage, supposedly organizing tools but really just seeking refuge. The familiar smell of sawdust and motor oil reminded me of simpler times, when Emma would sit on the workbench and watch me tinker with my old Mustang, her legs swinging like a carefree teenager. The sound of voices drifted through the garage's side window, Emma and Lily in the driveway, their conversation carrying on the evening air. Can't rush this, Emma was saying, her voice tight with what sounded like frustration. He's not stupid, Lil. I never said he was. Lily's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. But the longer we... She stopped abruptly, and I heard footsteps on gravel, their voices becoming whispers I couldn't catch. My hands clenched around the wrench I was holding. What exactly were they trying not to rush? The sick feeling in my stomach grew stronger. Later that night, Emma was unusually attentive, suggesting we watch a movie together like we used to. She curled up next to me on the couch, her head on my shoulder, but her phone kept lighting up with notifications she tried to subtly check. "Everything okay?" I asked after the third time. "Just work stuff," she said quickly, too quickly. "End of quarter reports coming up." I nodded, remembering that her company's quarters ended in March, June, September, and December. It was early May. "How's the book club going?" I asked casually, noting how her body tensed slightly against mine. "Good. Really good. We're reading." She paused for a fraction too long. "The Great Gatsby." "Again?" I kept my voice neutral. "Didn't you guys read that 2 months ago?" Emma sat up, putting space between us. "Did we? Oh, right. No, this is a different edition. With commentary." I watched as she stood up, smoothing her clothes with trembling hands. "I should check on those work emails," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Rain, check on the movie?" As she hurried upstairs, I pulled out my own phone and opened the browser. After a moment's hesitation, I typed, "Signs your wife is lying to you." The results made my stomach churn. Changed behaviors. Defensive responses. Inconsistent stories. Privacy with phone. New friends becoming oddly central to their life. I closed the browser, feeling sick. Then, after a long moment, I opened it again and typed a different search. How to track someone's phone without them knowing. The garage door opener hummed to life, startling me. Through the window, I watched Lily's car pull into our driveway for the second time that day. Emma appeared from upstairs moments later, keys in hand. "Emergency book club meeting," she called out. "Won't be long." I sat in the growing darkness, listening to their car pull away, and made my decision. Tomorrow, I would start looking into phone tracking apps. The guilt of investigating my wife warred with a growing certainty that something was very wrong in my marriage. I just didn't know how wrong. Not yet. The morning light filtered through our bedroom curtains, the ones Emma had insisted on buying last month, thicker than our old ones, offering more privacy. I watched her rush through her morning routine, noticing how she angled her body away while typing on her phone, how she'd started taking it with her even on quick trips to the laundry room. During my lunch break, I researched tracking apps, each click feeling like a betrayal of the trust we'd built over decades. Finally, I found one that seemed legitimate, marketed for parents tracking their kids, but the reviews told a different story. Stories that echoed my own: unexplained behavior changes, suspicious phone habits, gut feelings that couldn't be ignored. The opportunity came sooner than expected. That evening, Emma left her phone on the kitchen counter while she took a shower, a rare mistake in her lately precise phone management. My hands trembled as I quickly downloaded the app, disguised as a system update. The whole process took less than 2 minutes, but each second felt like an hour. Just as I finished, Emma's voice called down from upstairs. "Nathan? Could you bring me my phone?" I forgot to bring it up. My heart nearly stopped. "Sure," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. I waited 30 seconds, making it seem like I had to look for it, then brought it upstairs. "Thanks, honey," she said through the bathroom door. "Just leave it on the counter." That night, I lay awake beside her, listening to her breathing and wondering what secrets her phone might reveal. The tracking app would take 24 hours to start working properly. 24 hours until I'd either proved myself a paranoid husband or... "You're tossing and turning," Emma murmured, her hand finding mine in the darkness. The gesture, so familiar and intimate, made my chest ache. "Everything okay?" "Just work stress," I lied, hating how easily the deception came. Was this how it started for her? Small lies that paved the way for bigger ones? "You're working too hard," she said, and for a moment she sounded like my Emma again, caring, concerned, present. Then her phone buzzed on the nightstand, and she withdrew her hand to check it. In the blue glow of her screen, I watched her expression change, softening in a way I hadn't seen in months. She typed something quickly, then set the phone face down. Lily says hi, she said casually, but something in her tone rang false. She's thinking about hosting a dinner party next weekend. Would you be up for that? I made a non-committal sound, remembering the whispered conversation I'd overheard in the driveway. What were they planning? What was I about to discover? I love you, I said suddenly, the words escaping before I could stop them. There was a pause, too long, too heavy, before she responded. Love you too. But her words sounded hollow, like an echo in an empty room. 24 hours, I thought. 24 hours until I'd know if my marriage was worth saving, or if I was already too late. The next morning crawled by with excruciating slowness. Every notification on my phone made my heart race, though I knew the tracking app wouldn't send any alerts until tomorrow. Emma seemed unusually cheerful at breakfast, chattering about plans to repaint the guest room, the same room she'd insisted was fine when I suggested updating it last month. I was thinking of sage green, she said, stirring her coffee. Lily showed me some samples yesterday. Of course. Lily again. Always Lily. I thought you were at a book club meeting yesterday, I said carefully, watching her face. The spoon clinked against her cup as her hand faltered slightly. Oh, right. We stopped by the hardware store after. I meant to tell you. Another inconsistency. Another small lie adding to the growing pile. At work, I couldn't focus. Lines of code blurred before my eyes as my mind kept drifting to what I might discover tomorrow. My colleague Mark noticed my distraction. You look like hell, Nathan, he said during lunch. Everything okay at home? I considered telling him everything, the strange behavior, the lies, the growing distance. Instead, I just shrugged. Just tired. That evening, Emma announced she was going to yoga. She changed the class time recently, switching from morning to evening sessions. As she gathered her things, I noticed she was wearing makeup, something she'd never done for yoga before. Have fun, I said, watching her check her reflection one last time. Thanks. Don't wait up, we might grab smoothies after class. We. Always we now. After she left, I sat in our bedroom, surrounded by photos of our life together. One caught my eye, Emma and me at her parents' lake house 5 years ago. We were tangled together in an old porch swing, her head thrown back in genuine laughter as I whispered something in her ear. I remembered that moment perfectly. I'd been telling her how I wanted to grow old with her in a house just like that, watching sunsets from our own porch swing. My phone buzzed, a message from the tracking app company. Setup complete. Monitoring will begin in 3 hours. I stared at the notification, feeling suddenly nauseous. In just a few hours, I would have access to Emma's location data, her message logs, her call history. The weight of that knowledge pressed against my chest like a stone. Was I ready for what I might find? The sound of a car pulling into our driveway startled me from my thoughts. Through the bedroom window, I watched Emma climb out of Lily's car. She was still in her yoga clothes, but her hair was perfectly styled, not a sign of the post-workout mess it should have been. As Lily drove away, Emma stood in the driveway for a moment, typing something on her phone. My own phone buzzed. The tracking app's final setup message. Installation successful. Monitoring begins now. 3 hours early. My hands shook as I opened the app, just as Emma walked through the front door downstairs. Nathan? She called up. You won't believe what happened at yoga. I stared at my phone screen, watching as her message history began to populate. My finger hovered over the first text thread, the one labeled, Lily, with a heart emoji. Do I really want to know? The answer was yes. I needed to know. I tapped the screen. My world compressed into the glowing screen before me, each message loading like a hammer strike against the foundation of my marriage. The first few texts seemed innocent enough, book recommendations, yoga class schedules. But as I scrolled up through their history, patterns emerged that made my blood run cold. He's working late again tonight. Perfect timing. The usual place? Can't wait to see you. It's getting harder to pretend. My hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped the phone when Emma's footsteps sounded on the stairs. I quickly closed the app, but the words were already burned into my mind like brands. Nathan? Emma appeared in the doorway, her yoga outfit pristine, not a hair out of place. Why are you sitting in the dark? I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd loved since high school, who'd once written our initials in the margin of every textbook she owned, who'd promised forever in front of our families and God. Now she stood before me like a stranger wearing my wife's face. Just thinking, I managed, proud of how steady my voice sounded. How was yoga? Great! She smiled too brightly. The instructor tried this new flow sequence. I watched her lie with practiced ease, noting how her hands moved animatedly as she spoke, a theatrical performance meant to distract from the truth. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket, another message notification from the tracking app. And then we got those smoothies I mentioned, she continued, but I was barely listening. I remembered our first apartment, how we'd sat on cardboard boxes eating takeout because we couldn't afford furniture yet. How she'd looked at me then, eyes full of dreams and trust and love. The Emma standing before me now was someone else entirely. I'm going to take a shower, she said, already turning away. The yoga studio was really warm today. The yoga studio she hadn't been to. I watched her gather her things, every movement now suspect, every word potentially another lie. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Another secret. Emma, I said suddenly, causing her to pause at the bathroom door. Do you remember what you said to me at our wedding? About honesty? She stiffened slightly, almost imperceptibly. Of course, she said softly. Why? No reason, I replied, watching her face for any sign of guilt. Just feeling nostalgic, I guess. She nodded and disappeared into the bathroom. As the shower started running, I pulled out my phone again, my heart pounding as I opened the tracking app to read the latest messages. The truth was there, encrypted in casual conversations and seemingly innocent plans. Each word another crack in the foundation of everything I thought I knew. I had proof now, not of everything, but enough to know I wasn't crazy. Enough to know that the woman washing away her lies in our shower was no longer the Emma I'd married. The question was, what was I going to do about it? That night, sleep evaded me. Emma's gentle breathing beside me felt like a mockery. How could she rest so peacefully while carrying such secrets? The tracking app had revealed a pattern of deleted messages, suspicious time gaps, and location data that didn't match her stories. The yoga studio pins showed up only sporadically, while an unknown address in the old part of town appeared with alarming frequency. I rolled over, studying her face in the dim light filtering through our new privacy curtains. She looked younger in sleep, more like the Emma I'd fallen in love with. The one who used to leave post-it notes, with silly drawings in my laptop bag. The one who'd once driven 3 hours in a snowstorm just to bring me soup when I had the flu during a business trip. My phone glowed softly from the nightstand, another notification. With trembling fingers I opened it. Meeting cancelled tomorrow. And working late. Come over? Perfect timing. I've missed you so much. The timestamps were for tomorrow. They were already planning their next meeting. The realization made me physically ill. I slipped out of bed and made my way to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself, the dark circles under my eyes, the tight lines around my mouth that hadn't been there a month ago. Returning to the bedroom, I noticed Emma's hand had migrated to my empty spot, searching for me in her sleep. The gesture cut through me like a blade. Even in unconsciousness, some part of her still reached for me, while her waking self planned rendezvous behind my back. Nathan? She mumbled, stirring slightly. Everything okay? I stood in the doorway, watching her in the darkness. Just getting some water, I lied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Go back to sleep. She hummed softly and drifted off again, but I remained standing there, remembering all the nights we'd spent planning our future in this very room. The children we'd talked about having. The house by the lake we'd dreamed of retiring to. Now each memory felt tainted, each shared dream a cruel joke. Tomorrow, according to their messages, she would tell me she had another book club meeting. Tomorrow, she would kiss me goodbye with lies on her lips. Tomorrow she would. I couldn't finish the thought. Instead, I did something I hadn't done since my father died. I went down to the garage, sat in my old Mustang, and cried, silently, with the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs that come from watching your entire world crumble around you. When the sun began to rise, I was still there, my eyes dry and burning, my heart hardened into something I didn't recognize. I had decisions to make. Hard ones. But first I needed proof. Real proof. Not just digital breadcrumbs and suspicious patterns. I needed to know everything. The next morning, I watched Emma prepare for her day with mechanical precision, every movement now suspect. She hummed while making coffee, the same tune she'd hummed in the shower the night Lily first suggested, opening our marriage. The memory made my stomach turn. I have that book club meeting tonight, she said casually, not meeting my eyes as she stirred her coffee. The morning light caught her wedding ring, sending prisms dancing across our kitchen wall. I remembered slipping that ring on her finger, both of us crying with joy. Right, I said, checking my phone. The tracking app showed a message from an hour ago. Can't wait to see you. The usual place is perfect. Don't forget we're doing dinner with my parents on Sunday, she added, gathering her things. The casual way she could plan our future while systematically destroying our past made my head spin. As she leaned in to kiss me goodbye, I caught a whiff of that new perfume, the one she'd started wearing recently. The one she'd claimed was a gift from her office secret Santa in December. In May. Have a good day, she said, her lips barely brushing my cheek. When had our kisses become so empty? After she left, I sat at our kitchen table, surrounded by the life we'd built together. The coffee maker we'd bought on our 3rd anniversary. The silly magnets on the fridge from our vacations. The photos on the wall, Emma and me, smiling, happy, real. My phone buzzed. The tracking app showed her location, not at her office, but at a small cafe across town. I pulled up the address on my computer. It was near that mysterious location in the old part of town that kept appearing in her location history. Another notification. Just grabbing coffee before work. Miss you already? The response came quickly. Soon. Tonight will be perfect. I closed my eyes, remembering our first apartment, how Emma would leave coffee cups in every room, each with a lipstick mark and a note underneath. I love you more than coffee, and that's saying something. Now she was sharing coffee with someone else, leaving different kinds of marks on our marriage. The weight of what I was discovering pressed against my chest like a physical thing. Each new message, each unveiled lie, felt like another stone being laid on my heart. But I couldn't stop watching, couldn't stop gathering evidence of my world falling apart. Because somewhere beneath the pain and betrayal, a small voice whispered, "When did I lose you, Emma? When did we become strangers sharing a bed and a coffee maker, but nothing else?" I looked at my watch. In 12 hours she would leave for her book club. In 12 hours I would have to decide, do I follow her and face the truth, or do I keep pretending, like she does, that our life hasn't become a carefully constructed lie? The coffee in my cup had gone cold, just like the space in our bed where Emma used to sleep curled against me, trusting and true. The worst part about suspecting your wife's infidelity is how it transforms ordinary moments into evidence. That evening, I watched Emma get ready for her book club, with the kind of attentiveness usually reserved for crime scene investigators. She chose her outfit with deliberate care, the dark blue blouse I'd never seen before, the one that made her eyes look deeper, more mysterious. Her movements were precise, almost rehearsed, as she applied her makeup in our bathroom mirror. The same mirror where we used to make silly faces at each other while brushing our teeth. "You look nice," I said, leaning against the doorframe. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow, like speaking into an empty room. Emma's hand paused momentarily as she applied her lipstick. "Oh, thanks," she said too casually. Lily mentioned we might grab dinner after the meeting. Lily. Always Lily. My phone burned in my pocket, heavy with the knowledge it contained. Their latest messages had been careful, coded, but I'd started to decipher their patterns. Book club had become their shorthand for something else entirely. Which book are you discussing tonight? I asked, watching her reflection. The lipstick trembled slightly against her lips. The Bell Jar, she said after a beat too long. Lily's choice. I nodded, remembering the text I'd seen earlier. Same place as last time. Wear that blue top. Emma gathered her things, each movement a fresh wound. The way she checked her phone one last time. The extra spritz of perfume. The slight tremor in her hands as she picked up her car keys. Don't wait up, she said, reaching up to kiss my cheek, a gesture that once felt like coming home, now just another act in our domestic theater. I watched from our bedroom window as she pulled out of the driveway. According to the tracking app, her destination wasn't the library where her book club supposedly met. It was that same address in the old part of town, a converted warehouse district now full of luxury apartments. My hand shook as I grabbed my own keys. Tonight I would know. Tonight, I would see with my own eyes what the digital breadcrumbs had been telling me. As I followed her car at a safe distance, memories flooded my mind. Emma on our first date, nervously tucking her hair behind her ear. Emma in her wedding dress, whispering, "Forever," against my lips. Emma just last month, tensing when I touched her shoulder, as if my fingers had become unfamiliar, unwelcome. The sun was setting over the city, painting everything in shades of amber and shadow. Ahead, Emma's car turned onto a quiet street lined with renovated industrial buildings. My heart pounded as she parked outside one of them, a red brick structure with large windows reflecting the dying light. I pulled over a block away, watching as she checked her phone one last time before walking inside. Through the gathering darkness, I saw a figure waiting in the lobby, tall, familiar. Lily. They embraced, but not like friends. Not like anything I'd ever seen between them before. And in that moment, watching through the windshield of my car, everything I'd feared, everything I'd suspected, crystallized into a single, devastating truth. The question was, what would I do with it? Sitting in my car outside that red brick building, I felt like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. The sodium streetlights cast everything in a sickly orange glow, making the world feel surreal, distorted. Like those funhouse mirrors Emma and I had laughed at during our first date at the county fair. My phone continued updating their location, both dots now stationary, both in the same place. Somewhere on the third floor of that building, my wife was with her best friend, and they weren't discussing Sylvia Plath. I don't know how long I sat there, watching the windows above. Long enough for the evening to settle into night, for my coffee to go cold in its cup. Long enough to realize I was holding my breath every time a shadow moved across those illuminated rectangles in the sky. A text notification broke my trance. Going great! Probably another hour of discussion. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What do you say to a lie told so effortlessly? How do you respond to someone writing fiction about their whereabouts while you watch their deception unfold in real time? Take your time, I wrote back, each letter feeling like a small betrayal of my own. More memories surfaced, now tainted with new understanding. The way Emma and Lily had always shared secret smiles at family gatherings. How they'd finish each other's sentences. The lingering hugs that I'd dismissed as close friendship. Had it always been there, hidden in plain sight? Had I been blind, or simply unwilling to see? I remembered our wedding reception, how Lily had given a maid of honor speech that made Emma cry. "You've been my other half since we were kids," she'd said, raising her champagne glass. "Nobody knows you like I do. Nobody knows you like I do." The words echoed differently now, sharp with hidden meaning. All those inside jokes, those shared glances, those late-night phone calls, how long had they been speaking a language I couldn't understand? A movement caught my eye. Two figures emerging from the building, silhouetted against the lobby lights. Even from this distance, I could see how they moved in sync, bodies angled toward each other like magnets, finding their natural alignment. They paused at Emma's car, and I watched as Lily reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my wife's ear, a gesture so intimate it made my chest physically ache. I wanted to get out of the car. I wanted to confront them, to demand answers, to scream until my voice gave out. Instead, I sat perfectly still, watching as they shared one final embrace before separating. As Emma drove home, I waited, letting several cars pass before following at a safe distance. She was humming when she walked through our front door. I heard it from my home office, where I'd retreated after racing home through back streets. "Great discussion tonight," she called up the stairs. "You should read the bell jar sometime." I stared at my computer screen, at the tracking app showing her previous location, at the text messages I'd archived, at all the digital evidence of how thoroughly she'd dismantled our marriage. "Maybe I will," I called back, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. But nothing was normal anymore. And as I listened to her getting ready for bed, going through the motions of our shared life, I realized with crushing clarity that nothing ever would be again. The next few days passed in a fog of pretense. I went through the motions of our married life like an actor in a play, hyper-aware of every gesture, every word. The tracking app continued its silent vigil, documenting their meetings with clinical precision, coffee shops, the apartment, quick rendezvous disguised as errands. That Thursday evening, I sat in our kitchen, surrounded by wedding photos I'd pulled from our albums. In each one, Lily stood next to Emma, their bodies angled toward each other even then. How had I never noticed? The front door opened, and Emma's keys jingled in the hallway. She froze when she saw me at the table, her eyes darting to the scattered photos. "What's all this?" Her voice wavered slightly. I held up our favorite wedding photo, Emma in her dress, me in my tux, and Lily in her maid of honor gown, all of us laughing at some forgotten joke. "Just feeling nostalgic," I said, watching her face carefully. "Remember what Lily said in her speech? About being your other half?" Emma's hands tightened on her purse strap. "Nathan. It's funny," I continued, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest, "how sometimes we can look at something for years and never really see it." She sank into the chair across from me, her face pale. "What are you saying?" I spread the photos out between us like tarot cards, each one telling its own story of deception. "I'm saying that I've been blind, Emma. But I'm not anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, a car alarm went off in the distance, its wailing somehow fitting for this moment of unraveling. "How long have you known?" she finally whispered, and in those 5 words she confirmed everything. The admission hung in the air between us, heavy with 2 decades of shared history and shattered trust. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw not the teenager who'd stolen my heart, nor the bride who'd promised forever, but a stranger wearing familiar skin. "Long enough," I replied, my voice thick with unshed tears. "Long enough to understand that our entire marriage has been a cover story." Emma's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's not that simple," she began, but I cut her off. "Isn't it? Tell me, when you suggested opening our marriage, was that before or after you and Lily?" I couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. The truth was written in her silence, in the way she couldn't meet my eyes. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "Funny thing about intentions," I said, gathering the photos into a neat pile. "They don't make the pain any less real." As I stood to leave the kitchen, Emma reached for my hand. Her touch, once so familiar and comforting, now felt like fire against my skin. "Nathan, please, can we talk about this?" I looked down at her fingers wrapped around mine, remembering all the times those same fingers had typed messages to Lily, all the lies they'd crafted, all the trust they'd broken. "We can," I said quietly, gently pulling my hand away. "But first I need you to be honest, completely honest, about everything. No more book clubs. No more yoga classes. No more lies." I walked upstairs to our bedroom, leaving Emma at the kitchen table surrounded by the photographic evidence of our shared past. Each step felt like climbing a mountain, the weight of revelation pressing down on my shoulders. Tomorrow, we would talk. Tomorrow, the full truth would come out. But tonight, I needed to mourn the death of everything I thought I knew about love. Morning arrived with cruel brightness. Streaming through the curtains, Emma had chosen to hide our life from the world. I'd spent the night in the guest room, surrounded by the sage green paint samples she and Lily had picked out together, another memory now tainted with hidden meaning. I found Emma in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around an untouched coffee mug, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Her eyes were red-rimmed, makeup smeared, evidence of a sleepless night that matched my own. "I installed the tracking app on your phone," I said without preamble, my voice hoarse. "I know about the apartment. I followed you there." She didn't flinch at the admission, just nodded slowly. "How long?" "Long enough to know that book club meant something very different." I sat across from her, placing my phone on the table between us like a judge's gavel. "I want to know everything, Emma. From the beginning." She drew a shaking breath, finally meeting my eyes. "It started before our wedding," she whispered, and the words hit me like physical blows. "Lily and we've always been more than friends. Since high school. But our family's society, it wasn't something we could be open about back then." The coffee maker gurgled in the background, the same one that had witnessed countless morning kisses, shared dreams, quiet conversations. Now it provided soundtrack to the demolition of our marriage. "So I was what? Your cover story?" The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. "No!" Emma's hand reached across the table, then withdrew when I flinched. "I loved you, Nathan. I still do. Just differently. You were safe, comfortable, everything I was supposed to want. But Lily was everything you actually wanted," I finished, the pieces finally clicking into place. "The suggestion about opening our marriage, that was her idea, wasn't it? A way to make your affair legitimate?" Emma's silence was answer enough. "Did you ever plan to tell me? Or was I supposed to live my entire life as your convenient facade?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I convinced myself it wasn't really cheating because it was Lily. Because we'd been together first. I know how twisted that sounds now." I laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "Twisted doesn't begin to cover it, Emma. You let me build my life on a foundation of lies. You let me believe in a future that was never real." "It was real," she protested weakly. "Parts of it." "Which parts?" I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "The parts where you planned rendezvous while lying next to me in bed? The parts where you and Lily laughed about deceiving me? Tell me, Emma, which parts of our marriage weren't an elaborate performance?" She crumpled then, decades of deception finally giving way to raw truth. Through her sobs, the full story emerged, years of secret meetings, stolen moments, elaborate covers. How Lily's marriages had failed because she couldn't let Emma go. How they'd convinced themselves their love justified the deception. I listened in silence, each revelation another nail in the coffin of our relationship. When she finally fell quiet, sunlight had filled the kitchen, illuminating the ruins of our shared life. "I need time," I said finally, my voice barely a whisper. "Time to process that my entire marriage was someone else's love story." As I walked away, leaving Emma at our kitchen table, I realized that the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was recognizing that the love I'd believed in had always been a carefully crafted illusion. And now, like all illusions exposed to harsh light, it was dissolving before my eyes. The weekend stretched before me like an endless desert. Emma had gone to stay with her sister, at least, that's what she'd claimed. The tracking app showed she was at Lily's apartment, but I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. The truth was out. The rest was just details in the debris of our marriage. I wandered through our house like a ghost, touching objects that held memories now poisoned. The fuzzy blanket on the couch where we'd spent countless Sunday mornings. The kitchen timer that still had a heart drawn on it in Emma's handwriting. The wind chimes on the back porch that she'd insisted would bring us luck. In our bedroom closet, her clothes still hung next to mine, the fabric touching like lovers unwilling to part. I found myself running my fingers along the sleeve of her favorite sweater, remembering how she used to wear it on cold mornings, how she'd press her cold nose against my neck and make me yelp. But now every memory came with an asterisk, a footnote of deception. Had she worn this sweater to meet Lily? Had she pressed her cold nose against someone else's neck while I waited at home, trusting and blind? My phone buzzed, another message from Emma. Can we talk? Please? There's still so much I need to explain. What was left to explain? That she'd orchestrated an elaborate performance of love while her heart belonged elsewhere? That every "I love you" had been delivered with mental fingers crossed behind her back? I found myself in the garage, sitting in my Mustang again. The leather seats still smelled the same as they had when Emma and I drove to our honeymoon, her bare feet on the dashboard, singing along to the radio. Now I wondered if she'd been thinking of Lily even then. "You deserve someone who loves you completely," Emma had written in our wedding card. The irony of those words hit me with fresh force, and I found myself laughing, a broken, hollow sound that echoed in the confined space. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mark from work. "Hey man, been thinking about you. Beer tonight?" I stared at the message for a long moment. The thought of explaining my situation to someone else felt impossible. How do you tell people that your marriage was actually an elaborate cover for your wife's lifetime love affair with her best friend? That every memory, every shared moment, had been part of an intricate deception? But sitting alone in this house, surrounded by the artifacts of our fake life, was slowly driving me mad. "Yeah," I texted back. "Could use that beer." As I backed the Mustang out of the garage, I caught a glimpse of our house in the rearview mirror. From the outside, it looked exactly the same: the blue shutters Emma had painted last summer, the garden we'd planted together, the welcome mat that read, "Home Sweet Home," in cheerful letters. But like our marriage, it was just a facade, a pretty picture hiding a hollow core. Time to start facing the truth, one painful step at a time. I met Mark at O'Malley's, the same bar where Emma and I had celebrated our engagement 12 years ago. The neon signs cast the same blue-red glow, but everything else felt different, sharper, harder, like viewing the world through a cracked lens. "Jesus, Nathan," Mark said when I finished telling him everything. "I don't even know what to say." I took a long pull from my beer, letting the cold bitterness wash over my tongue. "Neither do I. How do you process finding out your entire marriage was essentially a cover story for someone else's love affair?" The jukebox played an old love song, the kind Emma and I used to dance to in our kitchen. Now every memory felt like handling broken glass, beautiful but dangerous to touch. "What are you going to do?" Mark asked, signaling for another round. I watched condensation drip down my glass, forming a perfect ring on the worn wood beneath, another circle broken, like my wedding band that now felt like it was burning against my skin. "I'm going to let her go," I said quietly, the words feeling both devastating and liberating. "Not because I want to, but because I finally understand that I never really had her to begin with. She's always been Lily's, I was just borrowing time that was never mine to keep." The truth of it settled over me like a heavy blanket. All those years of loving Emma, of building a life together, of planning a future, they hadn't been lies exactly, but rather beautiful photographs of moments that held different meanings for each of us. While I was living our love story, she was living hers with Lily, using our marriage as a frame for a picture I couldn't see. My phone buzzed one last time, Emma again. "I know I don't have the right to ask, but I hope someday you can forgive me. Not for what I did, but for who I am. I should have been brave enough to be honest, with you, with myself, with everyone. You deserved that kind of courage from me." I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me, not healing exactly, but perhaps the first step toward it. The tracking app still showed her at Lily's apartment, but I found myself hitting delete. I didn't need to watch anymore. The story had already been written. I was just the last one to read it. "You know what the strangest part is?" I said to Mark, who had been quietly letting me process. "I'm not just grieving the loss of my wife or my marriage. I'm grieving the loss of a version of myself, the man who believed in the power of absolute trust, who thought love was always enough if you just believed in it hard enough." Mark nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing to lose, though. Maybe the man who comes after him will be stronger for knowing that love isn't just about belief, it's about choice. And someone chose differently than you thought they had. I let his words sink in, feeling their truth settle into the spaces where my anger had lived. Emma had made her choice long before she met me. I was just the detour she took while finding her way back to it. As I drove home that night, our wedding song came on the radio. Instead of changing the station, I let it play, letting the familiar melody wash over me. For the first time, I heard it not as the soundtrack to my loss, but as the closing credits to a chapter of my life that was ending. Tomorrow, I would call a lawyer. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of untangling our lives. Tomorrow, I would start writing my own story, one where trust might be harder to give, but would be based on truth rather than convenient illusions. But tonight, I would simply drive, letting the city lights blur around me like the tears I finally allowed myself to shed, not just for the love I lost, but for the man I used to be, and the one I would have to become.